Thanks for staying with us. So joining us on the show to talk about 16 days of activism against gender-based violence is the British Deputy High Commissioner to Nigeria, Gill Atkinson. Welcome to the show, madam. Are you there?
I'm here, yes. Good morning.
Good to have you on the show. So this 16-day of activism against gender-based violence started November 25th. How do you plan to celebrate or commemorate this date in Nigeria?
So we've already been doing some activities in Nigeria. You know, the sort of public thing we're doing is talking about gender-based violence. I think one of the things that's come through to me really strongly as we look at this is that it's through being open about how pervasive gender-based violence is that we can really start to get people to take it seriously and to act on it. I'm really pleased that tonight I'm going to UN House, where along with a large number of Nigerian politicians and seniors, they'll be lighting up the building orange. But perhaps most importantly of all, in London, we're hosting a major conference led by the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, which Dame Pauline Talon is attending. And this is looking and making commitments on preventing sexual violence in conflict, which is something where we believe commitment and action from political leaders can really make a difference.
Okay.
So, what are your thoughts on the collective action Nigerians can take to eliminate gender-based violence?
So I think for me, the issue is that gender-based violence is everywhere in Nigeria. I suspect that if you asked every woman in your studio, do you know about it? Has it happened to you? Do you have a friend that it's happened to? They'd probably all say yes. But people don't talk about it. People don't admit it. People are ashamed of it. Women are ashamed of it. And to me, that's terrible. You know, why should the person who has been violated be ashamed of the fact that someone has violated them? Surely the person who should be ashamed is the person who's responsible. So to me, the more we can do and the more people like you can do to admit to the problem, to respond to it and to address it, that makes a fundamental difference, that it doesn't become a private shame and a private stigma. It becomes something which society as a whole wants to address.
Right.
Okay, so we have the 16-day social media package. So this is sharing the visuals and messaging, you know, about gender-based violence. And I wonder if through the course of this activism, if in any way we have seen or experienced like a positive response because of, you know, showing it out in visuals. Is there any data to prove that this makes it better? Is there any data to show that there's a change in mindset and just an improved response to this messaging?
Yeah, so I think the important thing here is, I think with problems like gender-based violence, it can be too easy for people to go, oh, this is part of our society, it'll take generations to change, it's so difficult, it's so complicated, so let's try and think about something else or do something else. So I was reading the other day about a project that had been done in the DRC, in some of the conflict areas there, where the project leaders brought on side faith leaders and traditional rulers to become advocates against gender-based violence. And they were able, in a relatively short period of time, only a few years, to reduce the numbers of women who said they had been the subject of gender-based violence by close to 50%. So I think, to me, this shows that in a society where gender-based violence was regarded as normal and part of life and just get on with life and accept it, actually, with the right advocacy and the right action, you can make a difference.
Right.
No, you were saying if we ask ourselves in this studio, we will know of someone who has been part of I wanted to know what the statistics are in Britain. Is it the same?
So I don't think they're quite as high in Britain. I mean, there were two statistics I read about Nigeria. The first is that nearly 3 in 10 women and girls in this country have experienced physical violence against themselves. But the one that's really more shocking than that is that this has happened by the time they're 15 years old. This isn't women, this is girls, this is your daughters, you know, and for 3 in 10 to have had some sort of violence against them in, you know, the first years of their life, before they're grown up, before they're adult, that's something which is shocking. I can't, off the top of my head, give you the statistics for the UK. I'm not pretending life is perfect in the UK, but it's not that bad.
Okay. Now, you see, when you see some of this data, there's some I have with me that says more than 5 girls or women are killed every hour by like a family member, and 40% of women who experience violence seek help. They don't seek help of any sort. Now, my question is, do we have demographics of these women? Because some people, some higher-end women will feel, oh, it happens only amongst poor people, you know, with educated people, it doesn't happen amongst educated people. Do we have the real data? Because maybe it only happens in the grassroots level, low-income, poor families. And if that is so, what are you doing, or what are you doing to support what government is doing within Nigeria on that level? However, if you the data you have is that it's all women across all strata. What is your government also doing to support at that end?
So I think if you know, one of the things to me which is stunning about this country, which I love, is that there are women at the top of many, many professions and activities here in Nigeria, you know, including some fantastic journalists. There are women at the top of business, there are women at the top of the arts. But if you look at the political environment here, you know, one gubernatorial candidate from the 2 main parties in 36 states of Nigeria. Now, what does that say about how politics regards women here? You know, and I have to say, quite frankly, you know, 50% of the population are women. What is it saying and doing that means that women are not being represented in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, in the gubernatorial level? Why is it that women are, you know, having interviews where people are talking about their dress or how pretty they are, not what their views are on education or violence in their state? You know, why are women not being asked about healthcare, the things which actually make a difference on day-to-day life? So I think for me, I'm not saying that every woman has been the subject of violence, but I think it's it allows you to make the problem someone else's if you say that it's only the lower classes, or it's only the educated, uneducated, or it's only the illiterate women this is happening to. I just don't think that's true.
Right.
And I think, as I say, if you asked yourself, ask your friends and colleagues, has this happened to you? Do you know this has happened, someone this has happened to? They would say yes.
Have you met any women that it has happened to? In this sojourn?
In my life?
No, not in this life. While you've been here, I mean, have you met any Nigerian women who have come up to you and said, "Oh, this is happening in my life," or "I can't talk about it"?
So I know different ways. I know one former parliamentarian who said to me her life as a parliamentarian was so awful that she was pleased to step down because of the abuse that she had, the lack of respect, the focus on her sex and her sexuality rather than her knowledge and her understanding. I certainly know of people I work with professionally who it's happened to. Right. And sadly, I know women who have been beaten by their husband.
Right.
It's part of life.
Okay, let me get a few more questions in for you.
Okay, so in Nigeria, the NAPTIP, the body for against trafficking, is the one empowered by law to enforce the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. How are you partnering with that body to, to raise more awareness on this?
Yeah, so we've been working on the Violence Against the Persons Act at different levels. We've been working in partnership with various state governments as they domesticate it into local law. We were very pleased to see recently that it's been domesticated in Kano. This is a fantastic success. We also recognise that for some states, and again, this is about having state assemblies that are all male, getting men to vote to accept the Violence Against the Persons Act has been a real struggle. If we saw better female representation, I think that balance would change in some states. With NAPTIP, our main partnership is focused on the trafficking of women. And one of the things that we have been working on with them over the years is a campaign called We Are Not For Sale. Because sadly, what happens to many women who are trafficked is that they end up in European countries, including the UK, in positions where they are the subject of sexual abuse or economic abuse or modern slavery. And they think that they're leaving Nigeria for a better life. And the reality is that they become an illegal immigrant, very few rights in Europe. And often these are well-educated professional women who are buying a dream that's not there.
That's not real.
Okay.
So the UK is currently hosting the Preventing Sexual Violence in Conflict Initiative Conference. Could you please tell us what the purpose of this conference is and the objective?
So the conference is, again, part of what I've been saying about the more people talk about this, the more politicians talk about it, the more that we make people aware of sexual violence, and particularly sexual violence in conflict, the more people are able to respond to it and to address the situation. I'm really pleased that Nigeria is being represented by Dame Pauline Talon, and that there will be a political statement coming out today, which Dame Pauline will be signing on behalf of the Nigerian government. And also that Nigeria has recently promoted women and girls' rights in the UN General Assembly. It's good to see, despite some of the problems I talked about, that internationally Nigeria's voice is being heard, and that Nigeria is responding to political initiatives.
All right. Finally, how can a survival-centered approach address sexual violence?
Yeah. So I think one of the challenges with this is that you get far too much victim blaming, whether that's she did something wrong, she was out too late, she annoyed her husband, she was dressed disrespectfully. All these things, all these phrases, we've all heard them. If a woman's been assaulted, if a woman has been the subject of violence, then the issue is about working with her. What does she need? What support does she need? What legal redress does she have? What confidence does she have that she'll get the practical and physical support that she needs? Will she find shelter? Will she find psychological support? Will she find a police station with a women's centre who will listen to her and not send her back into that violent situation? So a victim-centred approach is about this woman has been the subject of violence. how do we support her? How do we help her move forward?
Right.
And how do we get an answer that supports her, not what we think should happen?
Exactly. Thank you so much, Jill, for joining us this morning, and I wish you the best as the campaign starts November 25th. It started, it's for 16 days, and indeed we hope that people get the message of this. I think it's activism is the theme of this year, is Act Now, and I hope that Nigerians really can get some benefits from these 16 days.